Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 3. The Return of White Town. One day later. Rukia Kuchiki let out a heavy sigh as she wandered the streets of Karakura town in search for any hollows. The infamous Jillian known as White had been a top priority for many months, but its failure to reappear had left many within the Soul Society nervous. Due to their concern, they had stationed many Shinigami with high seats on patrol through random cities. Captain Aizen in particular had been the one ordering these patrols. The raven-haired woman couldn't help but wonder why he was so adamant in finding this hollow. She found the idea of a Jillian-class Mano standing up to a captain preposterous. Though if that was indeed the case, then it would be monstrously powerful if it were ever to evolve. If what Oni-sama says is true, then that monster will only become more powerful the longer it is allowed to live, Rukia concluded as she continued her patrol. Her thoughts were soon interrupted as she sensed an unbelievable source of Reiatsu. What in the world is that? She thought, horrified as her eyes shifted into the horizon. Not 10 seconds passed before a man with red hair and tattoos showed up next to her. He quickly spoke his mind. Rukia, did you sense that spiritual pressure? She stood there almost dumbfounded as she briefly looked over at him. Renji, you don't think it could be another hollow invasion, do you? Go and warn Captain Kuchuki. I'm going to find out what it is. Rukia said almost commandingly despite the fact that Renji outranked her. The red-haired man left immediately as Rukia set off for the source of the spiritual pressure. It didn't take her long to lock onto it, since it was ridiculously powerful and radiated like a beacon. Rukia was almost convinced it was some type of hollow invasion similar to a few months back. She made her way to its source as fast as possible, but upon getting there and to her utter astonishment, she only saw two hollows. The raven-haired Shinigami landed cautiously as she tried to get a closer look at the two hollows. One was pure white with upward horns and demonic green eyes. It had wings and, strangely enough, no mouth. It was insanely powerful, by her estimate, but the other one seemed even more terrifying. It was a mixture of white, black and red, but its long orange hair was very distinguishable. The creature's mask had markings going down over the eyes, and forward-facing horns. In that instant, Rukia's heart skipped a beat. Those eyes, that mask. It can't be. Rukia did her best to hide her spiritual pressure as she watched them from a safe distance. Despite their monstrous power, the two creatures appeared non-aggressive as they wandered around. The orange-haired one was leading the other as they walked down the street. Ulquiorra looked around curiously at the world of the living for the first time. This place isn't quite as interesting as I imagined. Wait, what is that presence I sense? This is where he came from. How could a being as powerful as him be from a place like this? Both Vasto lords immediately turned their attention towards Rukia's hiding place. She barely had time to react as both appeared in front and behind her. Terror was the only word that could describe her face as she slowly backed away from the intimidating orange-haired monster. She stopped in her tracks and briefly glanced back to see Ulquiorra's eyes boring into her form behind. The female Shinigami was truly worried now. Swallowing the lump in her throat, Rukia tried speak. This city is under the protection of the Soul Society. Leave now, we have a captain defending it. Both hollows seemed completely unfazed by her remark. Ulquiorra barely had any idea what this creature was talking about. He looked over at Ichigo expecting him to deal with the situation. The Vasto Lord reached out and grabbed Rukia by the throat, bringing her closer to his eye level. She struggled as the creature lifted her off the ground and stared into her eyes. Rukia couldn't comprehend the hatred they seemed to radiate. This creature, why is it staring at me like that? Forced to stare into this creature's eyes, she couldn't help but wonder if her theory was in fact true. Grasping for air, she tried to speak. Are you the hollow called White? Unhand her. Now, a calm voice sounded. Ulquiorra and Ichigo's gazes both jerked towards the source. How did he get there? I didn't even sense him. Ulquiorra thought, shocked. Ichigo dropped the raven-haired woman to the ground as he cocked his head at the newcomer. This man had long black hair with a headpiece of some kind clipping parts in place. His eyes appeared calm, but serious as he directed a stare directly towards Ichigo. Rukia immediately flash-stepped to Byakuya's side, who didn't even look back at her. The captain spoke with complete seriousness in his voice. Rukia, go to the Seraiti and get back up. I will hold them off. Brother, are you sure? There's 2 of them, the female Shinigami said worriedly. Her older brother appeared unfazed as he reached for this sword's hilt. That's an order. I'll leave at once, she replied before taking off. Afterward Byakuya glanced between Ichigo and Ulquiorra with a slight curiosity on his face. You 2 are small for hollows of such power. Are you Ajukas or perhaps Vasto Lords? Ichigo spoke to the man with a sickening, echoing pitch in his voice. We don't have to tell you anything, Shinigami, go away. Why are you in the world of the living? Hollows of your level have no reason to come here, Byakuya stated. It was evident that he already knew the 2 of them were Vasto Lords. Ulquiorra looked at the captain with a brewing curiosity. So this is a Shinigami captain. Why is he trying to stop us? We haven't done anything. The black-haired man drew his unsealed Zanpakuto and slowly walked closer to the duo. He studied them for any sort of movement or aggressive action. This is strange, they aren't attacking. They both appear very intelligent. I will have to be careful. Upon getting a closer look at Ichigo, the raven-haired Shinigami narrowed his gaze. Your mask description is that of the Jillian, white. Though you are no longer a Jillian, Captain Zaraki was very foolish in allowing you to live. It seems you've evolved. Ichigo glanced down at the man's sword cautiously. I wonder what he's capable of. I should hold back my aces until I get a better idea. White, is that what his name is? Ulquiorra thought as he looked at Ichigo. His thoughts were cut short when Byakuya looked over at him. I've never seen a hollow without a mouth before. What is that thing? Ulquiorra's stoic eyes met the Shinigami's in a passive glare. Byakuya felt slightly nervous as he shifted a glance back at Ichigo, who still hadn't moved. What are they waiting for? Neither one has attacked me yet. Ichigo finally broke the stasis as he began to walk away. Ulquiorra slowly turned and followed him. White doesn't appear concerned about this man. Byakuya immediately flash-stepped in front of them and held his sword to Ichigo's throat. Where do you think you're going? The black sclera, gold iris eyes sent him a death glare. Ichigo immediately grabbed the sword faster than Byakuya could react and jerked it downward. The force behind it was tremendous as it sent the captain crashing into a nearby building. He swiftly recovered and came in for another fast attack. Ichigo effortlessly dodged it and appeared behind the man. His eyes widened as he could barely turn around fast enough to stop a clawed white hand from impaling the back of his shoulder. The man grimaced in agony as he appeared further away and looked at the orange-haired creature slightly worried. I've never seen a hollow move that fast before. This thing is definitely a Vasto Lord. Taking a deep breath, Byakuya recollected his composure. It seems there is no point in holding back against a creature of your power level, Scatter Senbon Zakura. Ichigo watched with curiosity as the man's sword dissipated into pink petals, leaving nothing but the hilt. He cackled at the action as he charged in for another attack. Surprisingly, the pink petals came up to block him and ended up slicing Ichigo. Unfortunately for Byakuya, they were ineffective at piercing Ichigo's skin as he tanked his way through the assault. Byakuya kept his eyes locked on the orange-haired Vasto Lord, but felt a sharp pain from behind as the other hollow ambushed his flank. Ulquiorra mimicked Ichigo's action and tried to pierce the man's chest with his hand. Luckily for the captain, he narrowly dodged the attack if by a fraction of a second. Temporarily distracted by Ulquiorra, he had no way of stopping Ichigo from clawing across his back. Blood splattered across both hollows and the street as Byakuya braced through their combined assault. His Shikai wasn't effective at damaging either hollow, but it was enough to protect him as he brought it in for a defensive sweep. The 2 creatures temporarily ceased their assault as his Shikai reformed into a blade. Byakuya kept his composure, but inwardly he was worried. The restrictions on my power is preventing me from doing anything to even harm them. Luckily they haven't gone full force, or I would be forced retreat. The man took a deep breath as he pointed his sword downward. I have no choice, it would be foolish to hold back anything now. Before he could release his Bankai, several additional figures appeared out of nowhere. All of them were wearing white Shinigami outfits, quickly preventing Ichigo from charging in. Ulquiorra looked over them curiously. More Shinigami. Are they captains as well? From the group there appeared to be 3 additional captains. 2 of them, Ichigo recognized from his time as a Jillian, but one was unknown. This third captain had brown hair and glasses, and had an otherworldly confidence about him. "Captain Kukihi, the power restrictions have been lifted. The captain commander sent all of us when he heard there were 2 Vasto lords," the white-haired, short captain explained. Kenpachi's eyes widened with excitement. "Those eyes, that mask. You're the Hollow, White, aren't you?" Ichigo looked over at Ulquiorra and spoke darkly, "Let's kill them." The green-eyed Hollow nodded his head, accepting the other creature's command. Ichigo turned back towards the captain and released a deafening hollow howl as red spiritual energy surged from him. He cackled maniacally as he charged a Sero between his horns. It swelled to tremendous size before firing. Kenpachi, deciding to jump into the fray, attempted to block it. Ichigo's beam followed him as he leapt into the air. The power behind it was so colossal that it sent the man flying. There was no telling how far away he had been launched, assuming he was even still alive. Hitsugaya jaw dropped. So this is the power of a Vasto Lord. Ichigo laughed at the 3 remaining captains and made a come-get-me gesture with his clawed white hand. Toshiro immediately took the taunt as he charged in angrily, "You'll pay for all the Shinigamis you killed last time. I won't let you live this time, White." "Bankai. Bankai." Senbon Zakura Kajiyoshi, Byakuya added as he followed up with his own release. Both Vasto Lords charged in as they each picked a target. Right as Toshiro was about to slash Ichigo, 2 large bladed arms shot from his forearms countering the blade. Hitsugaya's expression was pure shock as the Hollow's sword arms quickly pushed him back. The 2 clashed back and forth in a flurrying frenzy. Due to the fact that Ichigo had 2 swords, Toshiro quickly found himself at the disadvantage as the Hollow overpowered all of his reckless attacks. Ichigo quickly followed up by parrying twice an uppercut. The blade narrowly missed slicing Hitsugaya in half, but left a large cut across his torso. The man flew back briefly and caught his breath. "Damn it, I've never seen a Hollow move that fast. Captain Aizen, are you going to help or what?" The brown-haired man was about to speak up before Kenpachi reappeared with a burnt uniform. The spiky-haired man announced himself immediately. "There's no need for him to get involved, I'll kill this one. He's strong. I believe the 2 of you can deal with White. I will make sure Captain Kuchiki is holding up all right," the calm suave-haired man spoke. Meanwhile over with Ulquiorra, the green-eyed Hollow was moving insanely fast as he tried to find an opening in Byakuya's Bankai. The pink petal blades actually managed to cut him this time, which caused the Hollow to be more cautious. Ulquiorra took his time testing the captain's defensive maneuvers before noticing a pattern. "His attacks move faster when he uses his hands, but it makes it possible for me to predict his moves." The black-haired Vasto Lord continued dodging Senbon Zakura as he tried to get closer towards Byakuya. As he got within close range, he brought up his finger and charged a green Sero. Byakuya's eyes widened as he drew his petals in to block the attack. As he resisted the powerful beam, he barely had time to stop Ulquiorra from breaking past his defenses and swiping him from behind. Unfortunately, the Hollow didn't count on it leaving himself exposed as a swift jab shot petals through his body, leaving many deep wounds. This opponent is actually putting up a decent fight now, Ulquiorra thought, surprised. Back with Ichigo, the orange-haired Hollow now found himself unable to go on the offensive as both captains wildly swung and twirled their blades at him. Using both of his, he fiercely parried and blocked as fast as he could. Ichigo was surprised by their power, to say the least. The level between Captain Class Shinigami and normal ones is as large as the gap between Hollow and Vasto Lord Manos. These guys are strong. Ichigo tried to come up with a strategy as the clashing blades continued at ridiculous speeds. Sparks seemed to form as Kenpachi brought his blade down for a powerful swing. Ichigo blocked it but quickly felt the powerful Shinigami pushing him down. Before Ichigo could move to block the oncoming Toshiro, Kenpachi grabbed his wrist and held him steady. "Come on, you can do better than that," Kenpachi chuckled. Before he could even finish his remark, Ichigo impaled the man's chest with both horns and did a back flip by kicking off his body in order to dodge Hitsugaya's ice attacks. As he flipped, Ichigo ripped his horns free and followed up with several devastating slashes, drawing more blood from Kenpachi. Upon landing, he tossed the large warrior aside just in time to counter a torrent of ice attacks from Hitsugaya. Kenpachi quickly jumped back up and seemed both excited and surprised that the hollow was able to hurt him so effectively. He charged in for another rapid slashing frenzy, but was stopped as Ichigo parried his blade with one arm and stabbed him in the chest again with the other. Unfortunately, Ichigo left himself exposed by doing this. Shinku no Kori no Yeba. Vacuum Ice Blade. The attack fired a large ice blast straight through Ichigo, staggering him just long enough for Kenpachi to push him back. The ice slowly crept up his body, but was instantly melted as he unleashed more of his power. A shard remained impaled, but Ichigo didn't even seem to care as he continued fighting. The rabid Kenpachi swung his blade again like a madman at the recovering Ichigo, quickly breaking through his defense. He now found himself pushed against a nearby wall as Kenpachi continued. Seizing a moment of opportunity, Ichigo ducked from a furious slash and immediately stabbed Kenpachi in his sword arm. The warrior howled in pain, but it seemed almost narcotic to the man as he continued trying to push his blade at Ichigo. Thinking fast, the hollow swung his other sword attempting to cut Kenpachi's arm off, but was blocked by Toshiro's blade. He ripped his sword out of Kenpachi's arm and swung both sword arms in an X pattern, sending both captains sliding back from the sheer force of his strength. Kenpachi stabbed his blade into the ground to slow the momentum while Toshiro leapt back into the air. Toshiro watched surprised as Ichigo cut the ice lance sticking out of his flesh. It fell to the ground and his wounds quickly healed soon after. Bakudo number 4, Heinawa. Crawling rope. Toshiro launched a yellow reishi rope attempting to restrict Ichigo, but the hollow easily broke out of it as he slashed it apart. The Squad 11 captain grinned at the display. "This thing's the most powerful hollow I've ever seen. I guess that means you're worthy of seeing my full power." Hitsugaya raised a brow, annoyed. "Have you been holding back this whole time? Don't underestimate this thing, you idiot. This hollow would have cut your arm off if I hadn't been here." "Oh, shut up, will ya? I'll deal with this thing. You can either help or get out of my way. Either way, the killing blow is mine." Kenpachi cackled as he tore off his eye patch. Ichigo was shocked by the power surge that followed. "What's with this guy? He's still got more power up his sleeve. Damn, these Shinigami captains are no joke," Ichigo thought as he growled with a hollowing echo. Toshiro said some strange words as he held his hands up and quickly followed with a shout, "Bakudo number 61. Raikujokuro." 6 light beams slammed into Ichigo's body, completely immobilizing him. The hollow seemed surprised by the attack. "What hell is this? I can't move." Hitsugaya followed up as he charged his Bankai's power. "Stay back, Captain Zaraki. I'll finish this." "Like hell you will." He shot back as the two captains charged Ichigo at the same time. Summoning as much power as he possibly could, Ichigo roared as he broke free from the spell. Toshiro's eyes widened, horrified. "Impossible, how did he break free? Damn it, I'm going to have to use my Bankai's full power at this rate. Even if Captain Zaraki's here, I can't allow this thing to live." The three shot back into another blade battle, but this time it was much faster and more devastating than before. Each swing and parry resulted in not only sparks, but near earthquake-like rumbles. Ichigo howled with bloodlust as he changed his fighting style. This time he used both sword arms and moved them together, blocking each captain individually. Though it seemed less effective at first, it was nearly unblockable as it sent both captains spiraling back. He would sporadically switch stances, catching both off guard and breaking through their defenses. This caused them to back off momentarily after a nearly fatal slash against Toshiro. Ichigo cackled almost evilly as Kenpachi came in for another attack. "Yahaha. Dai Shinigami." Both captains stopped abruptly as black spiritual pressure outlined in red formed over Ichigo's sword arms. He ruthlessly took advantage of their momentary pause and launched blackened wave-like attacks from his swords. They tore through everything in their path, including both captains. Ichigo spun both blades in wild flurries, unleashing a torrent of unpredictable, unstoppable blackened waves of spiritual energy. Kenpachi decided to brute force his way through several of them, trading the self-harm for a chance to charge Ichigo again. As he closed in, the hollow charged a Sero between his horns. He expected the attack to come straight for him, but to his surprise Ichigo fired it at Hitsugaya, preventing the white-haired captain from getting close. Believing he had Ichigo cornered, the rabid captain cackled as he jabbed his sword through the hollow's flesh. Much to his approval, The blade pierced Ichigo midsection. The man grinned wickedly as he pushed the blade in deeper. He used his free hand to grab the Hollow's throat and squeezed as hard as possible. "I'm going to snap your neck, Hollow." His grin was wiped off when he felt both of Ichigo's sword arms stab straight through him. He tried to pull his blade out in time, but was unable to as the Vasto Lord violently ripped both of his blades and made a cross-slash across Kenpachi's midsection, sending the warrior to the ground. Toshiro's eyes widened horrified. No way, he took down Captain Zaraki. Ichigo briefly looked at Toshiro before snorting in disgust and turning his attention to Ulquiorra. "I wonder if he's holding up all right against those other two captains." To his surprise, Ulquiorra was doing a good job at wearing down the original captain. The brown-haired captain didn't appear concerned as he continued to watch from the sidelines. The Vasto Lord shook his head at the sight. What is he so calm about? Ichigo flew down and landed next to Ulquiorra before speaking seriously. "We should leave before more show up. These Shinigami run in packs." Ulquiorra nodded. "That's a good idea, but what was the point of us coming here in the first place?" Toshiro quickly caught up and landed next to Aizen. "Captain Aizen, aren't you going to do anything? Captain Zaraki was just taken down. Hitsugaya-kun, the two of you failed to kill White on your own?" he asked, surprised. Though inwardly he was beaming. A Vasto Lord Hollow with Shinigami and Quincy powers. Imagine how powerful you would be as an Arrancar. Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo and Ulquiorra both simultaneously charged Seros at Byakuya, much to his horror. He knew he couldn't block both with his Bankai, so he chose to block Ichigo's instead. Ulquiorra's Sero fired at his blind side. It would have resulted in severely wounding him, but much to his unspoken relief, Hitsugaya blocked it with his own power. The white-haired man panted heavily. "How are you holding up, Captain Kuchiki?" "I'm fine," Byakuya said passively, though truthfully he was relieved by the other captain's intervention. Both had widened eyes when Kenpachi appeared out of nowhere again, attempting to slash Ichigo. It would have succeeded, but much to everybody's disbelief, his sword was parried by Ulquiorra's wing. The white bat Vasto Lord grabbed Ichigo and pulled him out of harm's way as the four captains now stood across from them. Ichigo was thankful for Ulquiorra's block. "I didn't even sense that attack, I thought he was dead. I can't let my guard down around these guys for even a second." As they all assembled again with their weapons raised, Byakuya spoke again. "Why did you two Hollows come here? What are you after?" For a moment, Ichigo thought about the question, "Why did I come here? I feel drawn to this place for some reason. I wanted to show this other Vasto Lord, but I don't think it's safe for him to stay." Ulquiorra looked at Ichigo as well, not really sure himself why the two of them were battling in the world of the living. Ichigo said nothing as he simply held his blades in a defensive stance. Ichigo briefly glanced over at Ulquiorra, who had a look of uncertainty in his eyes. The green-eyed Hollow wondered why they were there himself. "He wanted to show me this place, but why are we fighting these people? What's the point?" The orange-haired Hollow receded both of his swords as he glanced at Ulquiorra. No words were exchanged as Ichigo opened a garganta behind them. He motioned for the black-haired, green-eyed Hollow to go in first. "Go. Come find me when I return." Ulquiorra did as directed but was confused by the action. "What is he doing? Why does he want me to leave?" he thought, shocked. Nevertheless, Ulquiorra decided to accept the other Hollow's words. "I will find him when he returns, I suppose." After the garganta closed shut, Ichigo only drew out one of his blade arms. Aizen seemed intrigued by the display. Is he trying to protect that other Vasto Lord? Interesting, he has a strong need to protect others. I can use that to my advantage. He sent his friend away and only brought out one sword. Is he fighting with a handicap to mock us? Kenpachi asked with a bloody smirk. What is the meaning of this? Toshiro demanded as he pointed his blade at the Hollow. Ichigo quickly disappeared via Sonido, much to their surprise. A considerable distance away, he snatched up a raven-haired girl who had been spying on the battle the whole time and took her hostage before reappearing in front of the captains. They all jaw-dropped as the Hollow held the bladearm at Rukia's throat. Ichigo watched their reactions curiously. The white and black-haired captains appeared the most concerned, whilst the other two remained indifferent. Something about the brown-haired one with glasses in particular caused great uneasiness. Ichigo pressed the blade closer to Rukia's throat and spoke darkly, "Open the door to the Soul Society." "What?" Toshiro gasped. "You've gotta be kidding me." Kenpachi sighed as he hated hostage situations. Aizen almost grinned at the display. "You're quite ruthless, Hollow, but what makes you think you could match the full power of the Soul Society?" "I am curious what he wants to do there. I didn't anticipate this," Aizen thought, interested. "You go back, or she dies," Ichigo replied, causing all of the captains to eye him surprised. "Go back? What for?" Toshiro demanded. Byakuya narrowed his brow. "We will consider your request if you tell us what your purpose in Karakura Town is." Karakura Town. Ichigo thought for a moment. In that brief instant, he immediately remembered many childhood memories of the young boy with orange hair and his two younger sisters, and a father. "Maybe that's what drew me here. I knew I was from this place." Aizen took a step forward, causing Ichigo to instantly press his blade tighter, causing a slight trickle of blood from Rukia's throat. "Go now. Leave me alone. We ain't done fighting yet," Kenpachi shouted as he was about to charge in, but Aizen immediately held him back, much to his surprise. "Do as he says, Captain Zaraki, all of you leave. I can't risk him doing anything potentially dangerous to the Hogyoku," the man thought slowly. "What? Screw that. I am not passing up the fight of a lifetime over some girl," Kenpachi said disapprovingly. "Do as he says, Captain Zaraki," Byakuya stated with dead seriousness in his voice. Toshiro gritted his teeth and scowled hatefully. "You're a monster. Only something as evil as you would take an innocent person hostage." "Enough, Captain Hitsugaya, we will retreat for now. This Hollow is clearly aware of our weaknesses," Byakuya interrupted calmly. "We can't just leave a Vasto Lord to go rampaging through the world of the living," he protested. Ichigo's arm twitched as if he were about to slash Rukia's throat, forcing the white-haired man to shut up. "I've never seen a Hollow take someone hostage before. This Vasto Lord is a sadistic, cunning creature." "Open the door, Hitsugaya-kun," Aizen said. The white-haired captain reluctantly opened a door to the Seraiti. One by one the captains lined up at it, all except for Aizen. The brown-haired man stared Ichigo down with a calm demeanor. "Release the girl." The horned beast charged a Sero between his horns as he slowly walked Rukia closer towards the door. The others watched cautiously. Toshiro narrowed his gaze. "This thing is clever. It's got a backup plan in case we rush it. I knew that Vasto Lords were smart, but it completely took advantage of our morals. Damn it." Byakuya watched closely as he kept his Senbonzakura circling the group, ready to move in an instant. Ichigo hissed aggressively at Aizen. "You two, Four Eyes, get to the door." Four Eyes. Aizen thought, almost amused that a Hollow could use a childish joke against him. He is definitely Ichigo Kurosaki, or at least partly him. Aizen slowly walked towards the doorway, but held his hand up, "The girl first." However, before anybody could say or do anything, Ichigo moved faster than anyone could react and kicked Aizen into the group. The captain felt genuine disbelief in the split second afterward. "How did he manage to kick me?" The others had no time act, as Ichigo unleashed his Sero at point blank, launching all four captains through the open spiritual doorway. Byakuya tried to block it with his Senbonzakura, but the doorway quickly sealed shut afterward due to the tremendous power surge. Ichigo still had Rukia in his grip and laughed. "Stupid Shinagamis." Rukia fearfully looked up at the creature holding her hostage still. Ichigo briefly looked down at her and grinned beneath his mask. "Guess I'll keep you in case they come back." "What? Why did you go against your word? You honorless monster," Rukia shouted. He said nothing in response as he instinctively ran through the city. He used Sonidos to travel faster and tried to lock on to whatever it was that drew him here. Before long, Rukia found the two of them in a cemetery of some kind. There, Ichigo spotted two girls both crying at a tombstone. He watched them from afar and covered Rukia's mouth with his now normal hand to prevent her from making noise. The girl with the dirty blonde hair cried sadly, "Oni-chan." She couldn't find any other words as she began to burst into tears. The black-haired girl hugged her in a comforting embrace. "Don't cry, Yuzu, he hates it when you cry." Ichigo felt his heart nearly skip a beat as he watched them. He stared at the two girls uncertainly. "What is this feeling? Why did my instincts bring me here?" "Karen-chan." Yuzu sobbed as she buried her head in her sister's shoulder. "It's the 2-year anniversary of his death. Don't you have anything to say? There's nothing to say, the black-haired girl said with an evident sadness in her eyes. He was taken from us just like Mom. There's no point in crying over it anymore. Rukia watched the scene with curiosity. What the? I've seen those two girls before. They were attacked by a hollow a few years back. Their brother died if I remember correctly. I couldn't reach them in time before the hollow escaped. After all this time, you still have nothing to say about it. Why don't you ever talk about him, Karen-chan? Yuzu asked sadly. Anger was evident on the black-haired girl's face, much to the other one's surprise. Karen shook her head. It's not fair. Why couldn't it have been me? What are you saying? He died to a murderer. Karen-chan, I'm sure he was protecting us, Yuzu replied with tears flowing still. Karen shook her head again. No. You don't get it. I shouldn't have just sat there and watched. I could have done something. He was taken right before my eyes. Ichigo's eyes widened as he briefly remembered the orange-haired teenager being dragged away, and the black-haired girl he shook his head at. Yuzu, Karen, those are my sisters, he thought, shocked. He kept a stoic demeanor as he continued to watch them. Rukia had given up on struggling and watched with an equal interest. Why is this hollow drawn here? Does it know these two girls? She couldn't hear as well as Ichigo but knew that the hollow had some interest in the two of them. Yuzu, Karen, come on, let's go home, a dark-haired man with a light beard said sadly. From around the corner, Ichigo saw a man approach the two girls. His eyes were bloodshot, indicating that he had possibly been crying. The man sighed heavily as he looked over towards Karen. Don't hold yourself responsible for what happened, Karen. I should have been there for my family. I should have warned him about hollows the moment I knew he could see spirits. Isshin thought sadly. I just wish I knew where he was and why this had to happen. Yuzu said sadly. Isshin frowned at her question. We've talked about this before, Yuzu. He's gone wherever dead people go. Hopefully to a better place. Yuzu seemed to find some comfort in his words, but Karen on the other hand looked away disgusted. That monster killed him and dragged his ghost away. I've had nightmares about it ever since. Somehow I doubt that. Karen spoke venomously. Her sister was upset by the remark, but Isshin remained passive. Karen probably saw what happened. I wonder if I should talk to her about it. Though I don't see what good it would do at her age. Isshin thought. The father and daughters were interrupted from their conversation when an auburn-haired, doe-eyed girl approached them nervously. Excuse me, but are you Kurosaki-kun's family? We are. I think I know you. Inoue-san, right? We saw you at the funeral, Isshin replied. The girl held her head down sadly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was wondering if the police investigation turned up anything else about it. I was in his class. It seems like everybody else has forgotten about him, but I wanted to know if you had any news. Tatsuki and I still haven't forgotten about him. Karen scowled at the girl. Go away, we don't anything. Isshin and Yuzu seemed surprised by her outburst. Isshin sighed. Don't mind her, she loved her brother a lot. It's hard for her to deal with him being gone. I understand. Kurosaki-kun was a very dear friend of mine. I can understand it's hard to let people go. My older brother died a long time ago as well, Orihime replied, hoping to show some empathy to Karen. It worked on Yuzu, but not Karen, however. You were our brother's friend? Yuzu asked curiously between sobs. Orihime nodded. Yes, Kurosaki-kun was one of my best friends. I'm afraid we don't know anything else about it, Inoue-san, but I guess it doesn't really matter since he's dead. It's been over 2 years. All we can do now is move on, Isshin spoke sadly. Karen huffed angrily as she ran off, leaving Isshin, Yuzu, and Orihime behind. Ichigo quickly followed her, much to Rukia's surprise. What is this hollow doing? Before she could give it any more thought, Ichigo dropped her. Rukia didn't waste the opportunity to flee. She briefly contemplated the idea of following him but chose not to. My curiosity has already gotten me captured by this hollow twice. I should just get out of here for now. It doesn't look like it wants to kill anybody for the moment. I suppose that's good enough until the captains get back. Meanwhile, Ichigo followed Karen for several minutes. She appeared to be running as far away from her family and the cemetery as possible. After about 5 minutes, she found an abandoned park and sat on a swing set with tears free flowing. Ichigo, why couldn't I have helped you? You died to protect me. She was quickly drawn from her sorrow when they noticed a shadow standing over her. Karen slowly looked up with horror and spotted a tall, lean, orange-haired hollow with horns. She instantly froze in terror as the creature's hand reached for her. Karen clenched her eyes shut. No. It's another one of those monsters. Karen, the creature spoke, causing her to open her eyes. The girl shook in fear as the hollow's clawed hand slowly brushed hair out of her face. As his hand trailed down her cheek, his finger caught a tear. Ichigo pulled it back and looked at the girl with a heaviness in chest. She's my sister. What are you? How do you know my name? She finally managed to say in an almost inaudible tone. The horned monster took a step back and stared at her. She doesn't recognize me. Am I really her brother? Karen stared at the creature fearfully, but the sight of his long flowing orange hair seemed familiar. It's hair, it's the same color as Ichigo's. Ichigo said nothing as his golden eyes stared at her. She tried to get a close look at the monster's mask and was immediately reminded of the creature that dragged Ichigo away. This thing has a mask just like the creature that took Ichigo's ghost away. Her eyes trailed down to the massive hole in the creature's chest. What is that? How is this thing able to walk around with a hole in its body? 1,000 emotions swirled within Ichigo at that very moment. He felt an indescribable longing for this girl to acknowledge him as her brother. He didn't know how to speak to her, however, as the girl fearfully stared. What could I possibly say to her? How could I make her understand? What is this feeling? He thought as he fought the urge to go any closer. Thinking of the best way to make her understand, he finally spoke as non-aggressively as he could. What was your brother's name? The girl immediately glared at him. Is this thing mocking me? It's one of those monsters that killed Ichigo and now it's trying to torment me. Why should I tell you, monster? She finally said as bravely as she could. Ichigo could literally feel the emptiness in his chest amplify as if the weight of 1,000 buildings came crashing down on his hollow heart. She doesn't understand. I can't, no. His spiritual pressure was slowly starting to pick up as he felt intense anger at that moment. I can't tell her. She'll think I'm lying. How can I show her? Karen immediately regretted her words as the hollow heaved heavily before releasing a bellowing hollow howl. It seemed to shake the very night sky as Ichigo dropped to his knees. The girl's eyes widened as the hollow reached for its face. This anger, this rejection. Whoami. He was drawn from his hysteria when several reishi arrows shot directly into his back. Ichigo immediately stood up and turned around, noticing a teenager with glasses wielding some kind of bow. So you must be the source of the fluctuating spiritual pressure around the city. Leave that girl alone, hollow. Hollow. Karen thought, confused, as the teenager with the bow fired several more light blue spirit arrows at the horned creature. Ichigo effortlessly dodged them as he made his way towards the Kunasi. Yuryu's surprise was cut short as the hollow grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. He glared at the Quincy. What are you? Clearly you've never seen a Quincy before. Ryu half choked as the hollow's grip tightened. Ichigo carelessly threw him against a building, knocking him out cold, before using a sonito to reappear in front of the fleeing Karen. The black-haired girl stopped in her tracks as the hollow reached for her face. He pulled back after noticing the look on her face. She's terrified of me. My sister shouldn't be afraid of her own brother. She stood there frozen as he knelt down in front of her. The hollow looked down and spoke apologetically. I'm sorry for scaring you, Karen. What the? She thought, confused as the creature made eye contact. What do you want from me? What are you? She asked again, deciding not to run away. The hollow looked almost sad from what she could tell as he spoke slowly. I want to know what your brother's name was. Ichigo. His name was Ichigo. Why does that matter to you? Karen asked cautiously. He stood up upon hearing her response. Ichigo. My name. What? Karen's eyes widened with disbelief. Aryu. Ichi-ni. That hair. His voice. I knew it seemed familiar. Could he really be Ichigo? Karen tried to process the idea. Upon hearing her nickname, the hollow immediately recalled all of his memories as a human with his black-haired sister. He stood there unable to speak as he could barely believe the girl had finally acknowledged who he was. Much to his utter shock, she had tears free flowing. Are you Ichi-ni? What's happened to you? The girl stood there trembling uncertainly at the idea that this terrifying monster was her beloved dead older brother. I remember that creature dragging me away. It's not your fault, Karen. I'm glad you're okay. I would gladly do it again to keep you safe, he finally spoke after a brief silence. There was no holding back her emotions now as she ran over to the hollow and hugged him. Ichi-ni, she sobbed as she clutched onto the hollow tighter. For some unknown reason, Ichigo felt the horrible feeling in his chest soften slightly from her action. He reached his arms around her and hugged back, Karen. They stood like this for over a minute, but to Ichigo it felt like an eternity. An eternal battle with his emotions waged in the short minute they embraced. Karen finally broke away and looked up at the monster sadly. That monster, it did this to you, didn't it? Yes, I became a hollow, was all he could reply. He wanted to explain in more detail, but Ichigo figured her knowing who he was all that mattered. Where did you go? She asked curiously. He looked away for a moment. Somebody is coming. Before he could answer, he noticed Yuzu come around the corner. There you are, Karen-chan, where have you been? We've been looking all over for you. Karen looked between the girl and the hollow wondering if Yuzu could see Ichigo. After a moment it appeared as though she could not. Yuzu frowned at Karen's tear-stained face. Karen-chan, you're always telling me not to cry, are you all right? The black-haired girl was unable to reply. Yuzu ran over and hugged her sister. You don't have to be so cold all the time, it's okay to cry sometimes. I'm sure wherever he is, Oni-chan misses you too. Maybe he's watching us right now from heaven. As Yuzu hugged her, the black-haired girl looked up at the horned hollow. Maybe. Yuzu briefly turned around curiously. What are you looking at, Karen-chan? The black-haired girl looked Ichigo dead in the eyes. She didn't reply for a moment, causing her sister to look at her curiously. Is something else bothering you? Karen looked back. It's nothing, go on ahead, Yuzu. I just need a few more minutes alone. I don't want Dad to see me crying. Okay, but hurry up. Papa's worried, Yuzu insisted before leaving Karen alone. The girl looked up at Ichigo sadly. You don't deserve this, Ichi-ni, you're a good person. I'm sorry you became a monster just to protect me. Ichigo sensed a doorway to the Seraiti opening from across the city. Damn it, those captains are back. I better cut this short and get out of here before my family gets caught in the middle of this. I have to go now, Karen, Ichigo spoke sadly. Go where? Is there anything I can do to help you? She asked, nearly heartbroken. The hollow shook his head. Just seeing you and hearing my name was enough. Keep Yuzu and the old guy in line. You can't go, don't leave us again. You can stay here, she pleaded sadly as she reached for one of his arms. He looked down and sighed. I don't belong in this world, I need to go now. Will I ever see you again? She sobbed, heartbroken. The terrifying creature looked away, hopefully not. Without another word he disappeared, leaving Karen standing there shaken. She swallowed the lump in her throat and turned around, heading back to her father and sister. On the walk back she felt as if she could throw up. Ichi-ni, why can't I help you? Why can't you stay? She was quickly drawn from her thoughts as she bumped into none other than her father. The man stared at her with an evident sadness on his face and spoke. Come on, Karen, let's go home. The girl uncharacteristically leaned into her father's side as she walked home with him. The man sighed heavily as he glanced back in the direction of where Ichigo just was. That hollow, I didn't get a good look at it, but I swear it looked just like the one that attacked Masaki. Could that thing be back? I've been sensing strange spiritual pressures all around the city tonight, he pondered worriedly. X back in Hueco Mundo. XXX. Ichigo returned to the hollow world with an overwhelming despair filling his heart. Leaving his sister like that was difficult for him, but he had no choice, knowing that 4 or more captains had arrived to stop him again. As he landed back in the desert, Ichigo sighed heavily. What am I supposed to do? How do I go on living? I have nothing here, no reason to exist. But, to protect, yes, maybe I should hold true to that feeling. The one that saved my sisters. I will find my purpose in protecting others. After his concluding thoughts, he turned his eyes onto the horizon. Barragan's Ijuka hunting days are over. He briefly wondered where the green-eyed Vasto Lord was. I hope he can find me again, I didn't even learn his name. Well, I'm sure he'll be able to track me down once I challenge Barragan again. Chapter 4. A New Purpose. Ichigo flew through the skies at remarkable speeds, closing in on Las Noches. He was quickly distracted, however, when he noticed a deer like Ijuka. It was running away from what appeared to be one of Baragon's Ijuka hunting packs. The orange-haired Vasto Lord quickly landed between them, causing the Ijukas to stop in their tracks and the deer-like hollow to look back confused. The Ijuka hunting party all growled as intimidating as they could, but immediately stopped when two blades shot out of Ichigo's arms. "Who are you? What hollow dares to interrupt King Baragon's army?" one of them demanded. Ichigo hissed as menacingly as he could, "White." All of them gasped worriedly at the idea that this small hollow could be the infamous dragon. Their leader seemed to shake off the idea dismissively. "You're bluffing. White is a dragon, Ijuka. You're just a puny Vasto Lord," Ichigo interrupted, causing the other hollow to immediately regret his words. Ichigo roared deafeningly, causing a fearsome hollow howl to shake the desert. The deer Ijuka was too afraid to run away as it watched the orange-haired Vasto Lord slice the hunting party to pieces. Just for overkill, Ichigo finished off the last one with a Sero. After the horrible display of might, he turned back towards the fearful deer Ijuka. It stood there terrified, wondering if running was the best option or not. Ichigo quickly receded his swords and held up a hand. "Relax, Ijuka, I'm not going to hurt you." "Why, you're white," it bellowed fearfully. The voice was feminine, much to Ichigo's surprise. He calmly approached the frightened Ijuka and sighed, "If I was going to kill you, I already would have. Calm yourself." "What do you want from me?" she asked, still slightly nervous. Ichigo simply chuckled. "I just saw you were in trouble. I thought I'd help. I know what it's like to be hunted out here. Are you all alone?" "Yes," the deer replied slowly. Ichigo eyed her curiously. "What's your name? Why do you care? What does a Vasto Lord want from me?" she asked defensively. Ichigo shrugged. "Nothing, I suppose. I just wanted to protect you." The deer Ijuka eyed him uncertainly. "What? Why, you're the most infamous hollow in Hueco Mundo. You never did tell me your name." He changed the subject. The deer Ijuka gulped before speaking. "Apache." "Nice to meet you, Apache. I'm white, but you can call me Ichigo," he replied. The deer cocked her head confused. "Ichigo? What kind of name is that?" "It was my name when I was a human. It's how I would prefer to remember myself," he replied. Afterward he eyed her for a brief moment before turning away. "Take care, Apache." Wait," she caught his attention. He looked at her curiously. "What? Why did you protect me? What do you want from me?" "I don't understand," Apache asked again. "When I was an Ijuka, a female Vasto Lord helped me once. She healed a painful wound Baragon had inflicted on me," Ichigo explained. Apache eyed him curiously. "A female Vasto Lord helped you?" He nodded. "She did. Sometimes I wished I had stayed with her. It can get pretty depressing out here all by yourself." "You're strange. But thanks for saving me," Apache finally replied after an awkward silence. "You're welcome to come with me if you want. I wouldn't mind the company," he said calmly. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the help and all, but don't go assuming I'm going to be your slave or anything like that," she protested. "You don't have to, and you wouldn't be my slave. I just like having company. Being alone out here can be dangerous, even for me, and especially you," the Vasto Lord explained. "All right, I suppose that's okay with me. Where are we going?" she asked. He thought for a moment. Maybe I should go find other Ijukas like her. Having others to protect would really keep my mind preoccupied. Though, there's still the matter with Baragon. But I suppose that can wait for now. He's not going anywhere. There's a cave I wouldn't mind returning to. It was a pretty defensive place. It would be a safe home, I suppose," Ichigo thought aloud. Apache followed him as he ran in a particular direction. "Are you sure it's a good idea to head this direction? Isn't Las Noches this way?" "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe, and I can teach you what I know if you want to get stronger," Ichigo replied. The deer Ijuka perked up excitedly. "You would do that?" "Of course, from here on out, we'll have our own hunting party. If I find others like you, I'll let them join us," he continued. Apache cocked her head as they ran. "Others like me? Loners, the kind that don't support Baragon's monopoly of power here," Ichigo explained. The deer Ijuka nodded, but inwardly she was excited. This is unbelievable. Not only does an actual Vasto Lord wants to train and protect me, but the infamous White himself wants to. This is too good an opportunity to pass up. I'll become strong if I stay with him, or at least safe. As the two hollows departed, a blonde Vasto Lord watched them from a cliffside with a strange reaction. White protected a female Ajuka, he spoke to her so nicely. Is this really the hollow that caused such a big fuss with Barragan? Strange, perhaps I should speak to him. I sense no foul intent. X-Soul Society Squad 1 Barracks Captain Meeting. XXX. Captain Aizen, you will explain to me why two Vasto Lord class hollows appeared in the world of the living and were not dealt with despite the presence of 4 captains. Yamamoto bellowed. The brown-haired man nodded. Of course, Captain Commander, one of the hollows was the one we have been searching for over the past 2 years. It was clearly the evolved, White. The other one was likely its ally of some kind. They fought with remarkable prowess. Captain Commander, if I may interrupt, Hitsugaya spoke up. The creature took Rukia Kuchiki hostage before we had the chance to use our full power against it. It was also the most powerful hollow I've ever faced in combat. Do you agree with this statement, Captain Zaraki? Yamamoto asked the spiky-haired warrior. He chuckled at the question. You got that right, that thing can put up a fight. Excuse me, but how the hell did 4 captains fail to kill 2 Vasto Lords? And from what I understand in the report, one of them fled. So essentially one outsmarted 4 of you. Soifin interjected almost angrily. Calm yourself, Captain, Byakuya sighed. This was a very difficult situation. As Captain Aizen's report mentioned, the hollow took a hostage when it knew it couldn't defeat us. It had very high intelligence as one would expect of a Vasto Lord, but this being was not only cunning, but also malevolent. It knew how to get to us. That monster was a coward. Toshiro growled angrily. Most hollows are simply mindless beasts driven by hunger, but this one was simply cruel. Hiding behind a hostage is despicable. Hiraku cocked his head curiously. If it's so good at fighting, why would it do that though? From what Captain Zaraki mentioned, this thing wasn't really in danger of dying when it took Rukia Kuchiki hostage. I believe the hollow had some other agenda in Karakura town. When I first arrived to the scene, it had almost no interest in my presence, Byakuya mentioned passively. Yukataki frowned at his comment. What interest would a hollow of that power level have in the world of the living? We know that the existence of Vasto Lords are quite rare, but I find it more alarming that 2 were traveling together. Do you have any theories on what they were after? Byakuya frowned. I do not. What became of the hostage? Is she alive? Soifin asked anxiously as she crossed her arms. Aizen nodded. Rukia Kuchiki is in fact alive and unharmed. I was very curious why it spared her. She claims that the hollow dropped her after tracking down some humans in Karakura town. Humans. Why would a Vasto Lord be interested in humans? They don't feed on them, and are almost never seen outside of Hueco Mundo anyways. That's odd, Hiraku said with a downcast stare. Regardless of its reason for being there, this hollow is easily on par with a captain in terms of power, but its cunning nature is what makes it the most dangerous. The way it neutralized 4 captains with something as simple as a hostage situation was rather disturbing, Aizen noted, though inwardly he thought it was impressive. This creature seems to possess an unnatural hatred for Shinigamis, yet despite its actions it shows mercy to its hostage. That is unusual, Tucson added. I wouldn't mind facing White in battle. This hollow gets more fascinating each time we encounter it, Jin spoke up with a sly grin. I highly doubt you would fare better than we did, Captain Ichimaru. It did things I've never seen a hollow do before. It had blade-like arms it could retract and extend, which it used to counter our Zanpakutus. It channeled an unusual type of spiritual energy over them when it fought. They fired waves of black energy similar to Acero but more refined. Toshiro shook his head annoyed. Jin simply smiled. Oh, I see. Well, he is quite the powerful one then. By your estimate, what would it take to kill this hollow? All it'd take is me with nobody else in my way. Kenpachi spoke up assuredly. Hitsugaya scowled at him. You would have lost an arm to that monster if I hadn't been there to block it. You insist on dragging out fights with powerful enemies, but eventually you'll bite off more than you can chew. Who knows how powerful this thing will be the next time it appears? We didn't even see its full power. It didn't get to see mine either. Kenpachi countered, causing several captains to roll their eyes. To answer your question, Captain Ichimaru, it's very difficult to gauge that hollow's power. It was never pushed to the brink of death. Most hollows won't use their full power unless they're in danger of defeat. White used a considerable amount of power to fight us, but it did not appear to be worried for its life in the slightest, Byakuya cut in stoically. That's enough of this hindsight. Do I have to kill this thing myself? Yamamoto demanded, annoyed. The incompetence displayed in this situation was shameful. Head captain, we tried to return, but by the time we got back, the hollow was gone, Hitsugaya tried to explain. Yamamoto pounded his cane into the ground. This meeting is adjourned until further notice. I want all of you to take this time to inform the ranks of White and its new likeness. We will put an end to this creature once and for all. Yes, sir. Everyone shouted in unison. XXX 2 days later. XX. The 2 days Apache spent with Ichigo had been the most unusual and strangely relaxing days she could remember. The orange-haired Vasto Lord seemed very curious about her past and asked a lot about her life as a hollow. As they ran, Apache continued her story, and then, that's when I ran into the pack from Barragan's army. You know the rest, I assume. Wow, so you've been an Ijuka for that long. How have you not regressed back into a Jillian? Ichigo asked curiously. The deer shrugged her head. It hasn't been that long, besides, I'm not as powerful as you. I only hunt when I have to or when I can. I suppose that makes sense, he nodded in understanding. Why did you think it was a long time? How long were you in Ijuka? She asked. Ichigo thought hard for a moment. It's hard to really remember the exact amount of time, but I'd say a little over a year maybe. I've only been a hollow for 2 years supposedly. What, a year? That's crazy. You must have killed hundreds of other hollows then to evolve so fast, she said, shocked. The horned Vasto Lord thought for a moment. Thousands. I killed thousands in the Manos forest before I came to the surface. What? No way. There's tons of Jillians down there though, Apache said disbelievingly. He glanced over. Well, obviously I didn't kill them all, but I ate my fill. Jillians didn't sat me for long as an Ijuka. I killed all the Ijukas in the Manos forest though. No wonder everyone's so afraid of you, she noted. So how did you become a Vasto Lord? Well, that didn't take very long, since every other day I had an army of Ijukas hunting me down for the glory of killing me. Plus, I just had this drive to become stronger. I don't like Barragan, and I wanted nothing to do with him or his army, Ichigo said as the two continued. What's it like to have so much power? You must feel invincible sometimes, she asked. Ichigo shook his head. Not really. In my experience all it seems to do is paint a large target on my head. Those with power are inevitably drawn to each other, if by instinct or by fate. To be honest, I feel nothing. I needed a good reason to have these powers. Which is why I want to help others like you. I see, Apache nodded. The dear Ijuka found his explanation very interesting. That explains a lot about him. I'm glad he trusted me enough to explain. Hopefully things will continue to go well. As the two hollows continued, Ichigo found the cave he had once resided in during his twilight days as an Ijuka. He briefly looked around as he stepped inside and spoke authoritatively. Bug girls, are you there? Bug girls. An angry voice shouted, causing Apache to step back worried. She calmed down when she noticed Ichigo's calmness. What were your names again? Lolly, Mainoli, Ichigo restated. From the ground, the two Ijukas burst forth, both eyeing him uncertainly. Upon seeing him, the centipede spoke first. Oh damn, it's a Vasto Lord. That spiritual power is. The scorpion seemed to recognize his voice and horns. You know our names. Wait, you look familiar somehow. Are you White? You recognize me? Ichigo asked, surprised. Mainoli, are you out of your mind? If that's really White, then we should be getting out of here. Lolly said fearfully. They both quickly noticed the curious Ijuka standing behind him. The centipede was quick to mention her. What's with the Ijuka? And are you really White? He is. Lolly, look at that mask. There's no mistaking it, plus he knew exactly where we were and who we are. Mainoli spoke up. Before you two lose your minds, I wanted to run a proposition by you, Ichigo spoke calmly. Both traded a look of confusion before turning back to the horned Vasto Lord. What do you want from us? Lolly asked. I was wondering if we could stay here for a while. This cave is a pretty safe place, Ichigo requested. Apache shook her head at the notion. Why are we asking them, Ichigo? Can't you just take it? Who's she supposed to be anyway? You got a stray Ajuka following you around now. Lolly taunted. Lolly, stop it. Mainoli shook her head annoyed. Don't listen to her, White. I don't mind if you stay here so long as you don't kill us. I'm not going to kill you too. He shook his head and laughed, otherwise she wouldn't really be threatening me. Alright, fine, you can stay. Though what's the deal with her anyway? And did she just call you Ichigo? What the hell is that? Lolly asked. It's his name. Apache huffed irritated, so how's about you shut up? What did you just say to me? Lolly shot back. Everybody calm down. I trust you two won't give Apache and me any trouble. Ichigo practically threatened. The two Ajukas traded looks of concern before shaking their heads. Mainoli gave verbal confirmation as well. We won't attack you two, that's suicide. Good, then how's about you listen to my proposition, he began. Alright, fine, what do you want? Lolly half demanded. He looked back at Apache before speaking. I recently rescued Apache from a pack of Barragan's followers. She doesn't support him and has agreed to travel with me. So, Lolly said carelessly, what's that got to do with us? I know you two have each other, but it must be pretty dangerous to be all alone out here so close to Las Noches' field of influence. I was wondering if you cared to join us. Ichigo finally asked. Mainoli seemed surprised by the request. Why would you want us to go with you? We can't offer you anything you don't already have. That's where you're wrong, Ichigo replied. I've met a lot of hollows in my time here, and have spared very few of them. I kept you two alive because you seemed interesting to me. I wouldn't mind your company. Lolly seemed put off by the suggestion. Our company. What's your game, White? Is this some sort of trap? We don't need them, Ichigo. You have my company. Apache spoke up as she directed a condescending look at the two other Ajukas. I don't understand. You're super powerful. What do you want us to come with you for? Mainoli asked. Ichigo sighed. As I already explained to Apache, I don't really like to be alone out here. It's dangerous and extremely boring, not to mention depressing. You two would be much safer in a group with us, plus I could train you if you'd like. You would do that? Manali's voice sounded almost excited. Lolly on the other hand was more skeptical. What's the catch? I don't like the idea of you ordering us around. Life's full of trade-offs, think of it this way. Would you rather be with me or against me the next time Barragan sends an Ahucha hunting party out here? Ichigo restated. The centipede Ajuka seemed more convinced as she nodded. Okay, I get it, but let me ask you one thing. Would you actually train us to become stronger? Of course I would. I want my pack to be strong, Ichigo replied. Mainoli stepped forward and immediately spoke her mind. I accept, White, it would be an honor to follow you. What do you want us to do? Mainoli, don't be so subservient. He's asking us to follow him, not to be his slaves, Lolly protested. The scorpion sighed. This is a good thing, Lolly, you're always talking about us getting stronger. White's spared our lives twice now. Plus he's already got her following him. I don't sense any deception. Alright, fine, we'll follow you then. Happy now. You better protect us though if we're going to throw our lot in with you. Lolly responded. Apache shook her head and huffed. That one seems really ungrateful. Maybe we should leave her and take the other. What did you just say to me? Lolly demanded. Enough. Let's get one thing straight here. Nobody is forcing you to do anything. I'm just trying to recruit other hollows who I saw potential in. If you have a problem doing what I say, then you don't have to come with me. It's as simple as that, Ichigo interrupted. Lolly immediately calmed down. Fine, you're the boss then, White. I'll do what you say, but I'm not going to let dear girl over there trash talk me. Funny coming from a giant bug. Apache shot back. Both immediately shut up as Ichigo's spiritual pressure rose. Let's go, ladies. Since you're all so full of energy, I'll start your training right now. Ichigo left the cave and turned back, awaiting the three Ajukas to come outside. Apache eagerly ran outside first, followed shortly after by Lolly and Mainoli. As they exited, Ichigo motioned for them to line up. Apache held her head curiously as she wondered what they were going to do. Ichigo, I was wondering, how are you going to train us? Hollow powers are instinctual. We use what we know and hope it's stronger than what our opponent has, Apache stated. He gave her a nod. Yes, that is true, but in my experience, there is always a way to improve so long as you have the willpower to do so. I want each of you to tell me your motivations. Why do you want to get stronger? To survive, duh. Lolly stated with annoyance. The other two nodded in agreement, despite the rude way in which Lolly said it. He shook his head at the statement. No, that is an instinctual need. It drives you to survive, but not to become stronger. You need a reason to become powerful. Tell me, Lolly, what would you do if you were as strong as I was? The centipede seemed unable to answer his question for a moment. Lolly slowly spoke up. I don't know, I guess I never thought about that before. There's my point. What about you, Mainoli? What would you do? Ichigo turned his head towards the scorpion. I would keep Lolly safe, she replied. Ichigo nodded approvingly. Good answer, you would protect her. Protect, Lolly said distantly. Is that why you want to help us? Makes sense, doesn't it? He noted. All three nodded in approval. Afterward, Ichigo glanced at Apache. What would you do, Apache? The horned Vasto Lord asked. She held her head down. I would kill Baragon's army so they would stop coming after me. These are good reasons for you to get powerful, but try to look beyond them for a moment. Is there some emptiness you wish to fill other than your own hunger? Do you want to make a better life for yourselves in this place or languish in the emptiness? Ichigo continued. Of course I would, but how? Apache replied hopeful. You want to change the way the law of Hueco Mundo works. I mean, it'd be great, but I don't see how it is even possible. Lolly sighed. Mainoli spoke the most assuredly. I would do anything to achieve that. He laughed. If you three want to change the way things are in this place, then you share my desires. Since we all strive for the same thing, it makes us kin. Kin, how are we like you though? You've already evolved into a Vasto Lord, Lolly said doubtfully. The orange-haired Hollow looked at her with his haunting golden eyes. That doesn't make us different. I can tell you from experience that the emptiness only gets more unbearable at my stage of evolution. I want to help you three, but I want you to help me as well. Nobody can survive this place alone without eventually giving into despair. His words seemed to strike deep as the three Ajukas silently contemplated on his words. After a long silence, Ichigo looked over the trio. I want you three to show me what you can do, and I will show you how to make yourselves stronger. I'll go first. Mainoli stepped forward. She stepped forward and charged a red Sero-like orb between both claws. She jabbed it forward and released the attack in a beam. Much to her shock, Ichigo appeared in front of the Sero and quickly deflected it with his bare hand. The scorpion seemed surprised by his action. Ichigo looked at her closely. You're a scorpion, have you ever considered using the power of your Sero in a different way? What do you mean? Mainoli asked, confused. Imagine yourself in a battle. For the sake of practice, I'll let you use it on me. Don't worry about hurting me and just try to grab me with your claws while you fire your Sero from each one, he requested. Mainoli seemed confused by the remark but nodded. Okay, but I don't see what the point of that would be. She charged two independent Seros in each claw this time, and as she fired them she tried to snap her claws at Ichigo. Much to her astonishment, it launched a wave-like split from each claw, splitting the two Seros into four beam-like extensions. They followed the motions of her claws and quickly surrounded Ichigo. She was worried it would hurt him for a split second but sighed in relief as he blocked the spirit claws with each of his hands. Ichigo laughed approvingly. Good, now show me what that stinger is capable of. Doing as instructed, Manali's stinger flailed towards him remarkably fast. She wondered how he would block it with both hands preoccupied. Shockingly, her tail was stopped as Ichigo jumped up with both feet, catching it between them. She followed up by releasing a poisonous shot out of the stinger, which he promptly dodged. Good work, Mainoli, you caught on fast. As you can see, your spiritual pressure is like an extension of your own body. A normal Ajuka would have no defense against what you just did. Amazing. Why haven't I ever done this before? Mainoli said to herself as she backed off of Ichigo. He turned his head towards Lolly. Your turn, centipede, show me what you can do. Lolly hissed as she immediately burrowed underground. Ichigo calmly stood still awaiting her to emerge. The Ijuka burst out at surprising speed as she quickly circled him. Her additional legs quickly seemed to harden as her spiritual pressure rose. They appeared bladed as she tried to ensnare him. Ichigo quickly evaded her and reappeared nearby and shook his head. No, that won't work against a faster or stronger opponent. You need to do what she just did, find a way to trap me. The woman pounced aggressively as her front arms attempted to fire a Sero. As she did this, the back half of her segmented body unleashed a poisonous cloud. It didn't seem to affect him much to Lolly's surprise, but she followed through with her strategy nonetheless, and channeled spiritual pressure over her bladed bone-like legs. This gave her an almost serrated appearance. Moving fast, she fired her Sero whilst simultaneously trying to wrap Ichigo. He easily deflected her attack and leapt over her ensnaring body before jumping back. The Vasto Lord nodded. Good, if you get a bit faster then that technique would be quite effective against other Ijukas. Lolly seemed proud of herself as she moved back in line. Ichigo finally rested his eyes on Apache, who seemed a bit skittish. The deer-like Ijuka looked at him uncertainly. Well, I can't really do fancy stuff like that. Just show me, this is to help you all improve, Ichigo spoke reassuringly. The deer finally sighed in acceptance. Okay, here goes. Ichigo watched curiously as she charged a small Sero on her front horn. She jerked her head and launched it forward towards him. Ichigo easily caught the attack. Don't hold back, you're not going to hurt me, Apache. Fine, but you asked for it, she replied before repeating the same action. This time, the Sero grew larger. Instead of firing it like he expected, she came charging forward. He was surprised when she launched it nearly point-break range. Instead of firing like a typical beam, it compressed into a spiked extension of her horn. As he caught it, Ichigo immediately tossed her down to the side, throwing Apache off balance. The deer stumbled over and spoke up embarrassingly. Sorry. That's the first time I've tried something like that. It wasn't bad. Did you try to do what they did? Ichigo asked her. Apache nodded, almost embarrassed. Why yeah, I guess it didn't go as well as I had hoped. I wouldn't be so sure, Ichigo replied as he pointed to a devastating trail of destruction behind him. The deer Ijuka stared at the scene wide-eyed. Did I do that? But, you stopped my attack. What happened was you fired off a compressed Sero. The remaining spiritual energy formed an extension over your horn which you charged me with. Something like that could be quite effective if you knew how to use it. I can see it working especially well against an opponent who underestimates you, Ichigo said thoroughly. Apache simply looked at him surprised. I had no idea I could do that. That's the whole point of this little training session. I want you three to think about what you just did. You have your abilities, and you know how to use them, but there is always room for improvement. There is always a way to make it more effective, he continued. The three Ijukas watched him awestruck. Lolly seemed to be much less hostile now as she spoke approvingly. This might actually be worth it. Mainoli seemed shocked by Lolly's words but quickly followed up with her own comments. You see the world so differently than we do. I think I prefer your way. Is this how you've become so strong? It's part of the reason, but like I said, if you have the will to achieve something, then nothing is impossible. Follow your instincts, but never rely solely upon them. Ingenuity and ambition will motivate you to push your capabilities to the limit, he concluded. Can we keep training? I'm enjoying this. Apache spoke enthusiastically as she pranced towards Ichigo again. The Vasto Lord cackled at her enthusiasm. All right, then I want you to try something else, Apache. What? She asked immediately with glimmering anticipation. Make that Sero larger. Use as much of your spiritual power as you possibly can. I want you to fire it at me again. This time, don't trip either, he laughed. She did as commanded and kicked up sand as she charged him. While doing so she charged the Sero over her horn with as much power as she could. Ichigo wasn't satisfied by its size. Focus it between your antlers, like I did with my horns when I killed the last of those Ijukas hunting you. Apache slowed down slightly as she tried to do so. Much to Ichigo's approval, The red sarrow began to grow larger as it formed between her forward horn and two antlers. She almost couldn't believe the power behind her own sarrow. Have I had this potential all this time? I've never felt this kind of power before. As she closed in, Apache released her sarrow, causing Ichigo to block it with one hand. As it fired, she charged low and swept her antlers at Ichigo. She was hoping to take advantage of the fact he had only one hand to fight back. Ichigo was pleased to see that she had her spiritual pressure focused around her antlers as she pushed him back. This allowed her sarrow to actually collide. She followed up by trying to stab him with her charged horn. However, this time before he could grab it, the Ajuka kicked back on her hind legs and leapt over him. She hoped to land a sweeping hit, but was swiftly tripped as Ichigo deflected the rest of her sarrow. Afterward he nodded proudly, "You're getting better at it. Just remember not to overextend. Durable opponents could easily have countered you as I just did." "So what do I do then?" she asked, disappointed. "You need to get faster. In fact, all three of you would be a terror on the battlefield if you improved your speed," Ichigo said as he looked over their mixed reactions. Mainoli shook her head. "How though? I don't see how it's possible for an Ajuka to get any faster other than evolving." "That's where you're wrong. You know what a Sonido is, correct? How good are you three at doing it?" Ichigo asked, causing the three to eye him slightly downcast. Lolly sighed. "Yeah, we know what it is. It's that loud sound hollows make when they move super fast. I'm okay at it, I guess. I'm pretty good at doing those, but how does that help in combat?" Apache wondered. Ichigo immediately appeared right next to her with a Sonido and placed a hand on the dear Ajuka. Her eyes widened with disbelief. How did you move that fast?" "I've always been fast. I don't know if I can teach you how to move as fast I do, but I do have an idea. I want you to Sonido back and forth between this cave and that direction," Ichigo pointed. "Just do it as many times as you can," Ichigo said as the three gave him uncertain looks. Lolly huffed in annoyance. "What's the point of that? It sounds like a waste of time and energy. It will build your stamina and maybe improve your speed as well. If you manage to do it 100 times without stopping, then you'll be ready for the next stage of speed training," he explained. "You already have training planned for us?" Mainoli asked, surprised. Ichigo nodded. "I thought about it on the way here. Somehow I figured you two wouldn't turn me down." "What's that supposed to mean?" Lolly protested. "This might take some time, so be patient, just focus on what you're doing. Once you all improve your speed, we'll go hunting together," he replied. "I don't care how long it takes, I want to move like you do." Apache spoke up excitedly. She immediately used a Sonido to appear far into the distance. A moment later she reappeared at the cave. The dear Ajuka laughed eagerly. "This isn't that hard. I doubt this will take long at all." Mainoli and Lolly both repeated the action and swiftly reappeared. Lolly sighed in annoyance. "This is such a waste of time. How is this supposed to make us faster?" "Just keep going," he responded with an amused tone. ... Later, all three Ajukas were on the ground, collapsed from exhaustion. Ichigo shook his head at the sight. "It took you longer than I thought it would." Lolly seemed aggravated. "This is wasting our energy. What are we going to do if another hollow attacks us in this condition?" "Nothing's going to happen to you as long as I'm here. We can do this later if you're all too tired to continue," he replied calmly. Apache stood up first. "We don't have to stop. I want to keep training, unlike this pushover." "Who are you calling a pushover?" Lolly sprung off the ground with newfound vigor. Ichigo couldn't help but find the scene amusing. "Obviously you, since you're complaining about wasting energy." "I feel fine," Apache replied. Lolly scoffed at her. "Your legs are shaking, I don't believe you. Besides, you're way smaller than we are, so it should be easier for you." "It's not my fault you're encumbered unlike me," Apache shot back. Mainoli shook her head and sighed. "Honestly, I feel okay too, Lolly, though I am tired. Now that you've all had some time to train and get to know each other, I think it's time we went on our first hunt together. We can continue this training later. Honestly, I don't know how long you've been without eating," Ichigo interrupted their argument. Mainoli immediately perked up. "Hunting? You want us all to go hunting?" "Yes, while this training is beneficial, You three do need to keep improving your power the traditional way as well, the orange-haired hollow explained. I've never really hunted in a group before, Apache spoke up somewhat nervously. Ichigo glanced over at Lolly and Mainoli. I doubt they have either. They're used to trapping and ambushing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You three could find a way to work together. How though? Mainoli asked uncertainly. Apache held her head dejectedly. What kind of hollows would we be hunting though? I don't like the idea of picking off stragglers. That's just unfair. Oh, don't you worry, we're hunting the hunters. Let's see how mad I can make Baragon when my pack starts preying on his army, Ichigo laughed. The dear Ijuka seemed shocked. We're hunting Baragon's army. That's crazy, we'll be killed. No you won't, I'll be there to make sure you three don't die. This will be some good combat experience, wouldn't you say? The hollow continued laughing. Mainoli shook her head. I know you're not afraid of Baragon, White, but we are. What if he starts coming after us? I'm counting on that. Instead of tracking down stray hollows to eat, you three can just eat the idiots that line up to come after us, he said enthusiastically. Lolly traded an uncertain look with Mainoli. I don't know, some of Baragon's followers are pretty strong. Well, I'm in. Let's go find some right now. Apache chanted eagerly. ... XX closer to Las Noches. You've got to be kidding me, right? Lolly shook her head worried. What's the problem? Ichigo asked curiously. The Ijuka raised a brow and gave him a look of disbelief. There's over a dozen of them. So what? Numbers means nothing in the grand scheme of power here. There's 3 of you. Apache is the fastest, so she should go in first and lure them back. You two could ambush from below and easily catch them off guard. If any give you trouble, then use your new abilities, Ichigo replied thoughtfully. Manali seemed concerned about his explanation. So what will you be doing, White? Watching, of course. It'd be too easy if I helped you kill them. I'm just there to make sure you don't die, he explained casually. Apache's eyes widened. Why do I have to be the bait though? Some of those guys are huge. It sounds to me like she's scared. Maybe we should come up with another plan so Princess here doesn't get hurt, Lolly cut in dryly. The dear Ijuka directed a fearsome glare towards her. I'm not scared. I'll do it, just you watch. Go then, we're waiting, Lolly taunted with a smug grin. Well, what should I do exactly? Apache asked Ichigo. The orange-haired Vasto Lord chuckled at her question. Just go badmouth Baragon and say that I'm stronger than he is. I'm sure that'll get them angry at you. Right, Apache said slightly skittish, but nevertheless she made her way towards the Ijukas grouped up in the distance. She's totally scared, Lolly laughed. I would be, I'm just glad White's here, otherwise we'd be in trouble, Mainoli said worriedly. Ichigo glanced at the scorpion. Don't underestimate yourselves, you three will be masters at this in no time. Anyone that serves Baragon is weak. Apache shouted as she neared the hunting party. What did you just say? You're going to be our next meal, little Ijuka. An angered voice bellowed in the distance. Ichigo, Lolly, and Mainoli looked over to see Apache running extremely fast towards them. The Vasto Lord motioned for both of the remaining Ijukas to get in position for their ambush. They each burrowed beneath the sand as Apache kept running. Ichigo himself quickly vanished from sight high into the air where he could watch the scene from above. Almost all of the Ijukas came charging after Apache, angered by her shout. As the group got nearer, Apache stopped in her tracks and flipped around, charging a Sero over her front horn and antlers. This caused the other Ijukas to stop as they contemplated the idea of dodging or countering it. Then, much to their shock, the deer Ijuka came charging towards them with the orb still charged over her horn. Several tried to move out of the way as she got near, but each flank was immediately blocked as both Lolly and Mainoli sprung out of the sand. Lolly wrapped 2 of the Ijukas between her bladed legs as she unleashed a torrent of poison into the group. Mainoli cleaved through the other side with her Sero-like claw extensions, causing heavy damage to several of them outside hollows. The front of the pack was unable to avoid the charging Apache and chose to counter her Sero with their own instead. However, as they fired prematurely due to her close proximity, Apache leapt into the air and jerked her head downward, causing the attack to blast them from a higher angle. Several tried to flee, but were unable to as Mainoli grabbed them with her claws. Lolly's poison seemed extremely effective in disorienting and damaging the group, preventing them from countering the landing Apache. With her horned extension, Apache impaled several, bringing down quite a few. Those left alive tried to cheap shot the deer, but were immediately met with a sting from Mainoli, completely paralyzing them. The aftermath was 12 downed Ijukas and 3 very surprised ones. Apache pranced around joyously. "We actually did it. That was an impressive move, Apache," Mainoli complimented as she let out a sigh of relief. "They didn't even see us coming," Lolly noted as she began to eat one of the downed hollows. Ichigo landed nearby and nodded approvingly. "That was a good first hunt. You 3 work better together than I thought you would. Let's head back to the cave. Get some rest. From here on out we're going to train, hunt, and sleep." Apache gave Ichigo a strange look. "Hey Ichigo." "What is it, Apache?" the orange-haired hollow asked. The deer looked away. "Do you think any of us have the capability to become Vastolords like you? I mean, I've heard a lot about them. Some Ijukas say that those who become Vastolords were meant to, and that not every Ijuka has the capability. I don't know, it's difficult to say that only a select few were meant to become the elite. Although there may be some truth in the matter. To be honest, I think that's a question you have to ask yourself. When I first learned about Ahuchas and Vastolords as a Jillian, I knew that one day I would become one. There's no doubt that I was born with more power than a typical hollow should have. That being said, I believe anything is possible," Ichigo said distantly. Lolly simply shrugged. "I could care less about evolving, I just don't want to become a Jillian again." Mainoli nodded in agreement. "You got that right, though I want to be as strong as I can be, whether as an Ijuka or a Vastolord." "That's a good attitude to have," Ichigo said as he glanced back down at the defeated hunting party. "Eat up, girls." Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.